One important skill that we're going to need as we go into this chapter is to be able to write an equation into slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. We did this a lot in our previous chapter on solving equations, but the directions just said to solve for y. So this is not something new. We've seen this before, but it is something we want to take a minute and review because it's going to be our first step in a lot of different problems. So if we're thinking about a equation and we want to make sure that we keep everything lined up with that equal sign there, we want to isolate the y value. So I'm going to take and I'm going to drop down the y where it is, keep my equal sign lined up there, and then what I'm going to do is take this 3x and I'm going to move it from that side. And when I move it from the left side of the equation over the right side equation, it becomes a negative 3x. And then I'm going to drop down this positive 12. And then I see that I want to isolate the variable y, and I'm going to take and need to remove that 2. That 2 is connected to the variable y through multiplication, and so the inverse operation is division. So I'm going to take and divide by 2, but I must divide every term by 2. And so what I'm going to have is y is equal to negative 3 halves x plus 6. And now I've solved for y, I've isolated the variable y, and you could see that we're in slope-intercept form. The slope would be a negative 3 halves, and the intercept would be at the point 0.06. So if we're looking at this, our slope is right here, negative 3 halves, and our y-intercept is right here, positive 6. That's our b value. And there's the ordered pair where it would be located on the coordinate plane. All right, let's look at another example. Once again, solving for y. Works out really well if you try to take and keep that, keep that equal sign kind of lined up there. And so we want to take that 4y and drop it down. And right there is where a really common mistake is made. We drop down the 4y, but we don't notice that there's a negative sign in front of it. So we're actually supposed to drop down a negative 4y. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to move this 3x over to the other side. And it's a positive 3x, so when it moves to the other side, it's going to become a negative 3x. And then I'm going to drop down the positive 16. And now I'm going to take and divide everything by a negative 4, because I want to move this negative 4 so that y is isolated by itself. And so I'm going to divide by negative 4. I must divide everything by negative 4. And so I'm going to have y is equal to negative divided by negative is a positive 3/4 x. Positive 16 divided by negative 4 is a negative 4. And so I've isolated the variable. And this is my slope-intercept form. You could see that my slope would be 3/4, positive 3/4, and my y-intercept would be at 0, negative 4. Okay, let's go to the next one. And we're going to look at being able to solve for y. And once again, we want to make sure that when we drop down that y, we take the sign in front of it, and we're going to take the negative sign in front of it also. So what's really implied to be there in front of that y is a -1. So if you want to think of that as a -1y, that's what's there. And now we're going to take this x and we're going to move it to the other side, and it's going to become a -x. And then I'm going to drop down the +6. Now I want to isolate this variable y, and so I want to take and divide everything by the -1, and I have to divide all the terms by -1. And so I've isolated my variable, and I have it in slope-intercept form. And so I would be able to tell that my slope is a +1, and that my y-intercept is at 0, -6. So if you look here, the slope, which is right there, is a slope of 1. And if we look here, this is our y-intercept, and that's how I knew it was -6. I take that sign in front of it, and that is the point 0, -6. Let's look at one last example. And get things straight there. All right, so this one we're solving for y also, but we're going to have to do a couple of steps first. I'm going to take and do the distributive property here. And now we're going to take, and after I've done the distributive property, the only thing that I see, so just make yourself a note there, that that was the distributive property that we did, and had to be careful with my signs. But now the only thing I see that I need to move to be able to isolate the variable is I have this +3. And so therefore I'm going to take I have a -3. So I'm going to use the inverse, and I'm going to add 3. And that'll leave me with y on this side and a -5x. And then combine these like terms, and that'll be 13. And you could see that we're in slope-intercept form. The slope would be a -5, a decreasing slope, and the intercept would be at the point 0, 13.